On our live webinar. So today, me and Robert would like to share with you some experience about the maturity model, but not overall model, but really dedicated to the PMO. We hope that this will be a nice discussion about how to benchmark our PMOs and how to use this knowledge to develop the not only PMO, but also improve organization in that area. During this webinar, you have two options to contact us by voice and also by chat, and there is also the section for the questions. So you can use that. We'll try to check the question during the webinar, but if we not respond, we for sure check all the list at the end of the webinar.
Yeah. I'll actually check the questions, Majo, when you're talking and vice versa. Yeah, so I've got the chat window open.
Yeah. Now you should see the presentation that I share with you and what we prepare for today. So we would like to start with some very quick introduction, and then we will go to the benchmarking, why we should think about this and how the companies is doing that. Then Robert will present the AI PMO approach, what was developed and dedicated to the PMO. Also, we will present some case study or the elements of the case study, because this model is not just developed, but also is implemented in many companies. And also would like to talk to you about the next steps, when we can meet to go deeper with this benchmarking topics. And also I would like to talk you a few things about the conference, just one slide, because we are preparing a big event in Poland when we would like to talk dedicated to the PMO and the portfolio managers and to people who implementing the changes in the company in the area of the project, program, and portfolio management. We book some time for the question, but if you will have the question during the event, please let us know. Just a quick introduction from myself. I am representing the Whitecom. It's a consulting and training company based in Poland. Our major focus is to develop individuals to help them grow in area of project management, program portfolio management. We are supporting one projects to set up, to help to run them, or just to put them on track again. And the third thing is connected with today's webinar. We are focusing how to develop your organization, how to build the methodology processes, how to build the PMO and portfolio management. And I am with the company, with the colleagues from the Whitecom. We are doing this last 14 years. So a lot of experience, not only from Poland, but also from the different country, especially in Europe, but not only. So we will talk about this today. Also, I am co-author of the book of the PMO, but it's not an advertisement, but because it's only in Polish and it was far away from now, so it must be updated. So we will see what will be next in this area. And with me, why we are together? Because Whitecom became a partner more than 1 year ago. We became a partner of AI PMO because we were looking for some strategic partner in the PMO topic, and there was nothing good on the market with this level of the content, with this level of experience that AI PMO is bringing. So why we decided for collaboration. And one of this example of our collaboration is webinars, conferences, and other collaboration method. So why we are today together. Robert, the stage is yours.
Great, thank you, Marjorie. So my name is Robert Jocelyn. Some of you may know me or be aware of me. I founded AI PMO back in 2015, primarily because having worked on so many projects and seen others that have failed or been involved with projects that didn't succeed, it's really working out what is actually going wrong and how do we actually make it better. And I'm actually a consultant. I'm a chartered engineer. I also was a professor at Swiss Business School and now an assistant professor at Alma Mater. So we mix structure, frameworks, theory, practice, And we've actually created several books. In fact, 3 are published, others are actually outlined. And we actually have this concept called rebuilding from the foundations up into fundamentals, meaning we look and rather than just copy paste, we actually sort of see from first principles how things should actually be done. And so we have 3 books that are published. The 4th one, the PMO management standard, is actually written. Actually, we're in discussions about how best to actually publish that. I also review research papers for the top 4 journals as well in project management, portfolio management, which is very insightful because it actually shows you what's actually coming, the problems, the challenges, and it gives you extra perspectives in actually looking at resolving issues and challenges. I also, by the way, worked on mega projects. So all the books we've written are tested, and NEOM, for example, is one of the mega projects that we have people on the ground and they use the frameworks and concepts as well as with other mega projects as well. So next slide. So just a little bit about AI PMO. I established AI PMO with a number of others, and the vision, mission, and strategy hasn't changed since then. So this is Switzerland, actually, where that red dot is. It's the same village as Roger Federer and Martina Hingis and Hamilton, for example, was here. We're actually in Canton, Schwyz, with a Swiss Red Cross. The vision we have with AI PMO is to put the building blocks into place for PMO management. So it's not PMOs as an entity like a project is, it's like project management, PMO management. So we coined the term back in 2017. And in fact, there was really very little in 2015. In fact, if you look at the research papers, they all spoke about PMO people helping project guys have careers and nothing about PMOs. That's totally changed now, partly because of AI PMO, but also because of the interest for others as well. So why do we exist? What's our mission? Is to actually advance the theory, design, and implementation. So it's very important to sort of go from the first principles, as I mentioned, but actually look not just at theory, but the practice of how you look at high-performing collaborative PMOs. So the word collaborative is important because PMOs invariably don't work together. And so we've actually, all the frameworks, everything we developed, all the maturity model you hear about later is all revolving around that. So we can empower people, individuals to actually then create impact. How we go and do it? So we actually started with 1 framework. We now have 10 integrated frameworks. We use research. So we had 3 lots of research that came out. We added the culture element, for example, into the papers. So there's the 3 parts. How do we actually sort of do it? We take research. This is one of the frameworks of the 10. You see the orange dots, and then it gets put into the training courses. So we actually use the courses as a means of testing. It's one of the best ways of actually doing it. And then after about 2 to 3 years, we then write the books. So the first 3 have been published. And in fact, one of the books, which is the Organizational Portfolio Program Project Principles, that was used on a mega project and also a very large American project management association actually used that to create the principles for their program standard version 5. The standard is written for the PMO side and the others are actually outlined. There's other books besides that, but we haven't actually put them here. So this is called a research-driven approach. So these are the 3 key books we use, and then there's other ones that you can sort of see the dates, they're all outlined. In fact, we use a systems approach of actually how we develop things so they all fit together. So we've got certain principles of writing, certain principles of putting the books together. It's pretty complicated, but if you get it right, then you actually have a very tight set of documentation in the form of books. The next one. So the certifications that we offer, the very first one we started actually was the expert course in Riyadh in June 2015, 16. And the reason we actually did Saudi Arabia and started there is because they actually have probably the most advanced set of PMOs in the world. In fact, the Crown Prince actually referred to them in English about the importance of PMOs and all the different terms. And then we evolved the different certifications. So the course sets, the E, the P, and the F, which is on the bottom left. We also have the Master of Science and the PhD. So we started that with the DBA, and now we have the PhD with Alamata, and we're actually launching very soon the Master of Science as well. And then we have these things called the Masterclass certifications. These are typically 2 to 3 days. We've got specialist ones like micro-credentials. And then all the research that actually has been carried out feeds back into the certifications. So what we have is a reinforcing system of always making sure that we do updates. In fact, I'm working now on version 6 of IPMOP, and we're actually including a sustainability part too, which will be presented at a research conference next month in Croatia with IPMA. Next slide. So we have over 2,000 members, all in different parts of the world. We used to do face-to-face. COVID changed all that, so we had to redesign. As we go into the future, we're looking at some very big partnerships. We'll actually make our courses more accessible to people around the world. So onto the topic of benchmarking. So why do people actually want to benchmark? Well, there's various reasons. Just like when you take exams yourself individually. So if you click around, first one's improving sort of performance. And where are you? People question about PMOs. You hear lots of reports about how many PMOs fail. Some is fake news, others information is correct. But we all want to improve ourselves, so that's a good way of doing it. Risk management, culture, innovation. These are all ones that you may pick 2 or 3 or even just one, saying, okay, let's benchmark ourselves. How good are we? And I actually worked on a project with the CEO for the World Economic Forum. And when we presented the top 500 companies in the world in a 3-dimensional model, the CEO, all he wanted to do is how well are they compared against their competitors? So that's a form of benchmarking, and this is exactly the same. How well are you doing in your PMO against others in your organization and outside? Next slide. So this is an example of some of the benefits, and some of you may be aware of maturity assessments. There's lots of sort of things you need to watch out for, and I'll actually describe those a bit later. But we just took a sample of it. So you hear about the different levels. So starting from sort of level 0 or level 1 to level 5. So for example, if you go to the top level, you should be able to save 40% on ongoing basis of all the progress on projects. PMI made this quote several years ago about only 1 in 3 in PMOs achieve their full potential. I actually think very few. I mean, I didn't see the research itself, but that was one of the common statements. KPMG talked about PMOs in their report. The top level 5, they don't standardize, they actually adapt for the different teams. And we'll actually talk a bit about that. And this is another one from PM Solutions saying if you get to like level 3.4, you should have a 26% improvement, which sort of ties in with the 40% with KPMG. So it's difficult to actually compare across different types of surveys, but they seem consistent that as you're working your way up and you're improving, then you should also see that impact as well. You should see that impact, and we'll come on to that. Next slide. So this is actually a brand new set of scales, and we'll talk a little bit about that. When the Carnegie Mellon came out with maturity assessments back in 1980, they didn't know about principles and all services. They talked about just process improvement, and it was really for software programming. Probably it was COBOL programming. The thing is, about Agile, about the importance of principles. In fact, PMI went in 2017. They started in the first set of principles. I was on the portfolio standard, and we asked to write a set of principles, a portfolio of principles. In fact, that was the first standard of all the PMI ones that actually was principle-based. The thing is, with the processes, is not relevant. PMOs are about services. So what we've created is a set of service scales. And so we actually, you'll see a little later about the different types of scales, but they all work together. It's not process, it's actually service-based. So here you see the 5 levels, and actually when you get up to the top level 5, you should be able to achieve a 40% of the savings on your project portfolio, according to the previous slide. Go to the next one. So this is an example of a real client. In fact, I will sort of go through that. So this client actually is a financial organization. They have 2/3 of their projects are actually late. And you can see the issues that needed to be addressed. And in fact, the model that we've actually developed, we actually use 24 domains. So whether you call it service domains or performance domains or themes and Atlas calls those things, it doesn't really matter. But a lot of these issues actually span across 1, 2, or 3 of them. And what you see on the right is like a bit of a slide that we actually show when we go into more detail, and we'll actually show that in the actual masterclass in Poland of how you can actually solve particular problems after going through the assessment and actually looking at improvements for that. what you see at the bottom is that because they've actually got 40%, or they've got 10 out of 15 projects are late, if you just move up one level, you actually reduce the portfolio budgets at risk between 6 to 10 million US dollars, assuming a 100 million portfolio. So assuming that maturity or impact as you work your way up, you reduce the projects at risk, it was really worth doing it. And in fact, this is actually how we just use one of the ways of justification. We look at project success rates, and that's one of the measures we use to the justifications of actually doing the assessment. In this case, it's definitely worth it, moving up to the 5 levels. Go to the next slide. So beyond traditional benchmarking. So I was actually looking for my PhD of challenging benchmarking, saying, well, as you work up your levels, say level 1, 2, 3, 4, this is more process increasing efficiency, that in fact you won't actually increase, you'll become into a process straitjacket. And in fact, I found several papers that actually stated that. And so really what we've done is move away from process procedure that's in the 80s to some things that are more principle based. So what we actually have is the first 4 levels or 3 levels is looking at efficiency. So this actually follows the driver's competency model. You've got to learn to walk before you run. And then you have this thing called an inflection point, levels 4 and 5. This is really where you're more principle based. So people are experts, they're competent. This is typically what you need to have if you work on agile projects. You don't have beginners, you have experts working on agile projects. So this is what we call the ideas and innovation zone. And then this one on the right it's more of a sort of slide. We have a proposal, but it actually shows the relationship between PMOs that directly impact and indirectly impact project programs and portfolios. We have all the analysis for all this from research on success factors and how they influence them. Go to the next slide. Some of the shortcomings of models today. The first thing is they're not designed for PMOs. So it's like, would you want to use diesel in a benzene car? You don't, it just doesn't work. Unfortunately, that people are using models that are not designed for PMOs. PMOs are about adaptability. They don't really mature. In fact, we didn't want to use the word maturity, but we did just for consistency. Whereas with the projects, it is about repeatability. In fact, that's where the first model started. They're procedures based. They don't actually have principles. They cover explicit knowledge, what's written down. They don't cover near tacit. Near tacit is things like behavior, decision-making, culture, things like this. When you're actually in a meeting, you don't refer to a book to take a decision. You base it on the near tacit, on your tacit experience and what's in your head. But you also, the stuff that's written down influences you. It's not services-based, it's process-based. So all of these things are shortcomings of existing models. Go to the next slide. So one of my students, Peter Cole, Dr. Peter Cole, is actually a partner of a consulting company. We were actually looking for his PhD about what is PMO success and about maturity models. So he actually spent 3 years, an amazing amount of time looking at the characteristics of successful PMOs, and then he mapped it against the existing models that are out there. So P3M3, OPM3, CMMI, and then the maturity cube. So this one, for example, the maturity cube, this was Americo Pinto, who took Monique Albray's 27 functions back in 2012 and made a 3-dimensional cube. The problem is it doesn't actually really cover the input factors for successful PMOs. It's actually the worst of them all. The best one is actually CMMI, this one here. However, none of them actually cover them all except for the one that we developed. We actually know what the characteristics that we can design for it. These other ones, except for one of them, were not designed for PMOs. So you wouldn't expect them to cover it. So if you're going to test something out, make sure you use a model for what it's fit for purpose, and not for something else. The other one is I mentioned about scales. So the one on the left is typical scales, where it's about optimization. As I showed in the previous one, if you're not careful, you become into a process straitjacket. And so it's fine for software, but it's not actually fine for agile projects, nor is it actually fine for PMOs. They work on services and also principle-based. So what we have on the right-hand side was a new set of scales that took us 6 months to develop, maturity scales with principles. And in fact, we're the only people in the world who actually have written books on principles. So one is the PMO principles and service principles, and the second one is actually corporate governance, portfolio, program, and project principles, and they all integrate together. So we actually write the books and then we develop the models. So this is the world's first in actually looking at not just maturity, but what's impact. It's not what you learn, it's the impact you make. So this is really important. We in fact created a -1 scale. So I'm sure that all of you have met people or seen maybe some PMOs or departments that actually destroy value, value destroyers rather than value creators. There's also a 0. Some people make actually no impact at all. So what we've done is actually put that scale in there as a -1 counterproductive. It's important that it actually is there, but we hope we're never going to assess a PMO that's at level 0 or -1, but we need to actually be complete. And then all the other scales here, that's all described behind it. So we've split maturity and impact, and we'll go into more detail a bit later why. You'll see what it really means for the example and potentially for your PMO as well.
Small example
Sorry.
from me. So in the one PMO in the financial sector, the PMO was developed like 1.5 years, and they decided to review the benchmark before we AI PMO create this model. And we have a very big struggle to decide what to use. So should we use the project management maturity levels, but it's not describing the PMO itself. Also, the PMO providing some services, and they are doing that and trying to learn and educate the company about the how to run the projects. But of course, it's a long process, and they are feeling that they are quite mature inside the PMO, but still they are fighting with organization to implement that. So we was struggling to find solution how to score this PMO and how to benchmark and how to analyze and how to show to the board of directors where they are, because in one they feel that they are operating quite well inside the PMO, but there is no such effect that they expect outside the PMO yet. Of course, they believe that the effect will be soon. So if we will score them just from the project management, program, and portfolio level, the effect will be was very low. But when we talk about how they are organized and how the service looks like inside the PMO, they have a very nice implementation. So why it's very important to differentiate this topic, how a PMO operate and what is the impact on organization. We used at that moment, we used some Six Sigma levels to try to score the points, but you know it's hard to say what is the error in the process of project management. So we were looking for the dedicated for the PMO assessment that help us to really find out and score not only the PMO but also the impact of them for the organization.
Great, thank you. So our model itself. So I often hear, and other people that work in AI PMO as well, that, oh, we've got a maturity model. Everybody has a model. And in fact, when we show our model and then see what they have, there's quite a difference. It's taken us 5 or so years to actually get to this point. So starting research in 2017 on the left-hand side, we produced the first conference papers, publishing in PM World Journal, other research conferences. Then the bottom you see the model. In fact, it's actually several frameworks put together, looking at different contextual enablers, looking at the domains. In fact, this is a very subtle thing. You cannot compare any PMO against any PMO. What you do is you compare it against itself. So we look at, rather than an absolute, we look at a relative, but we need to actually understand this concept called the domains. So control is actually what are the mandated services, which are either assurance of compliance and whatever, say, mandate in the mandate. The domain of influence is actually where they should be putting in the services, what they can influence, and concern is actually about risk. So we have a whole method that we actually use in all the case studies and all the courses to actually determine this part. So each bit's been tested out. And then we created the model. And then we actually been operationalizing it. We started the first assessments. It was launched in May, and we started the first assessments straight afterwards from that particular point. So it's got a long history to it. So the assessment process, there's nothing special in this. What is the problem you're trying to solve? What's your motivation? Is it performance? Is it looking at reducing risk? Remember that slide, first of all, you define your objectives, you actually carry out the assessment, which then you create a baseline. And then if you look to the right, there's a thing called a PMO TOM. It means target operating model. In fact, this is all written into the new standard. So it really pushed the thinking of how to go and create operating models. So this is typically what management consulting companies do. For the PMOs that are operating a center of excellences, or maybe the ones that there's a lot of people working as consultants. When they have several PMOs in the organization, they want to make sure that that team of PMOs is optimized in the right place. And from what we've seen is that the majority are not. And that's why they come on the courses, because they've got problems. If they're on the expert course, it looks at multiple PMOs, where we actually look at redesigning and creating a target operating model, which you can take away and then look at refining it and actually implementing it. So these are the sort of steps you go through within the basis of building a target operating model. Next slide. So this is more detail. So you do the current state assessment, and it doesn't matter whether these PMOs are delivery based, meaning they involved with projects, or non-delivery, such as a center of excellence or a strategy PMO. There's literally hundreds or thousands of types of PMOs, not just the 3 types that were known by people from PMI, that is supported controlling and directive. Those have actually, in our courses, we've never had any PMO since 2016, when I was first asked the question, that fit into any one of those categories. In fact, PMI doesn't use those terms anymore. They use other terms instead. So really, we have a whole naming approach, how do you actually name depending on what they do. The model itself, we look at principles, we look at these domains, as I say, because we look at relative to, rather than absolute. We look at the PMO topology, like a network topology where they exist, the PMOs in the organization. We look at the service topology. There's the 3-level structures. It's in the big book we have on service and capabilities. Then we use the framework, the strategic life cycle, which is actually these 2 on the bottom right. We use it compared against the 24 service domains. We look at explicit and near tacit, and then we actually triangulate the data. So it's not just getting the verification and validation, we also go to an extended group as well. And then from that creates the scores of maturity and impact, which is then your baseline. The information on the right is actually all the checkpoints that we have. It gives you a sort of simplified overview of how it's actually done. Next slide. So the steps of doing the assessment is pretty typical, where you look at the questionnaire, data collection, analysis, and assessment report. You see a tier 4 at the bottom. We actually have 6 tiers that Margie will actually explain. A tier 4 assessment takes around about a week on site. I mean, it depends on how big the PMO, but it's about 4 weeks of work to actually complete. And you have a document of 80 to 140 pages. This actually, you can implement it, as it includes the target operating model. That's the big piece of work, and saying, well, if you are a very low level, what do you need to do? What's your path or your roadmap to actually increase the impact and the maturity for you? Next slide.
Yeah. So how the model was built to tailor all this expectation and the different approaches. That what issue I got when I assessed the company before, that if I got a standard assessment, I asking so many stupid questions if the PMO is advanced, but I need to go to the procedures. So in practice, after one day, you realize what is the PMO level and try to focus only on that. So in this model, we got preliminary 6 tiers that is dedicated to the different PMO, their levels, and they impact on the company. So the first thing is, of course, we need to consider if we got a single PMO in the company, or we're talking about the multi-PMO company, that the sum of the PMOs has also impact for the others, and they need to collaborate. So the different things we need to check to review this kind of situation. But what I loved with this model is that at the beginning, in tier 1, each of the PMO manager or the client can do the self-assessment It's about 100 questions. I will tell you more about that in a moment. And based on that, you can review a little bit where you are and what should be the next steps. But the next level from tier 2 to tier 6, the approach is that we need a person who knows the models, who know how to use some tools and know what to review. Thanks to that, prepare the dedicated two-tier report assessment and the report at the end. So the company, in very quick, with the support of external person, of course, defining what the tier we should like to check, and based on that, we are working together. Thanks to that, we are able to tailor the assessment to the PMO history, PMO size, PMO position of the levels in the company. The final effect is also important that it's not only the score. This is full analysis that I will show you in the next slides, and presenting also in the descriptive way that the client can easily understand the results recommendation and also understanding of some services that we recommend in that area. So this is the major point in this model. And few examples. So I mentioned about tier 1. So the level that every PMO can review very quickly, it's about 1 hour to review that. And I have pleasure to work with the one Polish company to do the same as self-assessment. It was, in practice, it was not self-assessment. I was doing that with the client, with the PMO manager. But still, it was very quick to go through the 100 questions to review where we are. And it was very nice starting point because in the old domain and in the old services, domain of services, the client got some response where we are, what is from a self-assessment point of view, the levels. But of course, the question helped us to better understand. And what was the first value? That the questions itself was the value for the client, because they got a question about some lesson learned and do they do something like that, and it was in some area like eye-opening what we can also offer as a PMO. So the service level, but also full some kind of recommendation and some kind of description. What this area means for us and what is the best practice in that level. Of course, it's not a dedicated report to your size and the sectors and other aspects of your PMO, but it's very nice and quick starting point to understand when we are, and we are able to compare each PMO at the beginning with using this shortcut, or I can say. The tool is online, so it's everyone can do it very quickly. Of course, the tier from 2 to 6, it's more dedicated with the independent consultants with the knowledge how to review the situation. So self-assessment is always, our opinion can be not subjective, are always subjective. So on some levels, we need to external person that will review, and the results of that kind of assessment, it's not just scoring like I mentioned before, but full report, like examples from the companies from 80 to 100 pages with the results about the assessment, about the recommendation, about next steps. And I will show you in the moment some details, examples of the results from the company. Of course, like I mentioned, the difference on the level, if the company have one PMO or many, depends what we are focused on and how, let's say, how many areas we will conduct and review during the assessment. And some examples. It will be not one case study, but we selected with Robert some examples from the real assessments, and wanted to show you the effects and some tips. Even if you're not decided to use that assessment, maybe some tips from this part will also help you to think about your PMO and next steps. So in one example, there was a very operation PMO that was on the same level as a different department, but was very tactic PMO. And what was very important that when we designing the PMO, in many situations, people are thinking, okay, I need one unit. But in practice, if we talk about the different services, different level of engagement, different level of the impact, we need to tailor and sometimes focus on the different things. So this is example when the PMO that was, let's say, operation level, need to focus in one area to support strategy and was moved a little bit like to the CEO office to focus for the strategy execution to make sure that the company understand how the projects and some activities are aligned with the strategy. But also we got some estate area that was needed the PMO support. And also we got like IT department where the portfolio management was needed. So what I wanted to say that the future state, based on the needs of the company, must be tailored to the actual situation and real needs. And assessment, of course, help us to understand how this PMO should operate in that company. The second thing is that what Robert already mentioned about the difference between the maturity and the impact. And here you got an example that one of the company was scored on the level 2 as a maturity, but the impact on the organization was number 1, level 1. So they are ahead of the organization in the maturity level, but still, of course, we cannot focus only on the PMO itself, how they are happy with their performance, but also what is the effect for the company. The next example is some kind of risk that we want to pretend or protect the company in the developing path of the PMO. Because in one company, we scored the company on the level 1 in the maturity and the impact. So it was, of course, not enough to be a value for the company. So the normal goal and normal stage that we try to, that everyone is trying to achieve as a PMO manager, for example, is to get more authority, more power, more impact on the company. But if we design this path in the wrong direction, we can achieve that the PMO maybe will develop the maturity level and the power in organization, but the impact will now grow up and now increase the value for the company. So in that situation, we have many examples that PMO became more bureaucratic PMO or isolated PMO and really focus on themselves, how they are good inside the PMO, not what the value they bring to the company. So why it's important to design very well the path of developing to make sure that the PMO not only focus for itself, but also for the impact in the future for the company. Okay. And this is some examples what we can, regarding to this example that I bring you in the previous slide, you see the full spectrum of the direction when we can go, depending on the impact and the maturity level of the PMO. So in that example, we want to focus more on the portfolio and customer-centric PMO, rather just to go to the bureaucratic PMO that will more control the processes inside the company. I'm not saying that it's not important, but of course, we are not doing that to have a papers or to have a data. We are doing that for some purpose, and we must understand this purpose, and this direction help us to go there. And also, what is the value from the benchmarking, that we can use this benchmarking for ourselves, for example, because definition of a benchmarking is not only with the other company, but also with themselves. So we want to use that as a baseline for the next review. And I'm sure you got many situations that company is forgetting how bad situation was with the project management. So after 1 year, you implement the PMO, you implement some service, you improve the process of reporting, you improve some process of decision making, and so on, so on. And after 1 year, nobody remember that there was a house. So benchmarking help us to present what is the difference, but also, of course, can compare with the others. And this is something what is, for me, the value, and company is always asking for. Okay, we know that we are on this level, but what about our competitors? If our competitors are maybe on the worst level, maybe we don't need to invest so much in the PMO in this area. Of course, I am laughing a little bit, but still, this is the idea to understand how far we are behind the competitors or ahead, and what we should develop next.
Let me just add an extra point
Yeah,
just to that last one. So you see that on the red line, the client assessment, this particular PMO was actually assessed at 1 and only did a number, not all of the service domains. Yeah, so they looked, for example, administration, innovation, knowledge management, but didn't look at configuration, issue management, etc. And so in the recommendations that we do, when we see the whole problems in their domain of influence or the domain of control, we see what they should be doing, and actually this is in the recommendations that comes out. But not all PMOs will do all 24 domains, and you won't get prejudiced. You won't get prejudiced in the score. But if it's something that you should be doing, that will actually reflect in the actual, probably in the impact score, may also be in the maturity score as well. So it gives you an idea. So nice to benchmark yourself, but also benchmarking in a bigger perspective, across your industry or whatever you want to benchmark yourself against.
What next? First of all, AI PMO is not only providing the assessment, but also making sure that this assessment is official accredited, and each company got individual certificate of that work and the effects and the level that they achieved. So for someone that could be used as for the internal purpose, just to present the effects and to support the future development. But of course, some company for sure will use that to promote themselves outside. And I can give you one example that right now we got a very nice PMO in one company that was happy with the results, and they used that to offer the service on the outside. So there was internal PMO that supporting internal, of course, the external project also for the clients, but they are so good at this in the country that they develop the next step of the PMO is to develop the service for the clients direct. For example, to rent a project manager from them. It's an IT company that offering some software implementation projects, and they recognize the project management as so advanced and the PMO that they can offer this as a separate service for the clients. So this is and of course the maturity and impact both score are important for us. And of course, it's important, it's a single or multi-PMO level. We are also thinking about the awards, and not only in Poland we got a PMO award, a competition for the Polish company, but also about global recognition about for the companies that following and achieve some maturity level and impact level. Robert, you want to add something to that plans?
Yeah, the fact that we split maturity and impact, there's always been an assumption that higher the maturity, the higher the impact, and that isn't necessarily the case, especially when you make decisions about the structures of PMOs in the organization. So with these awards, there won't be this year that we're going to offer them. It will be actually next year. It's taken us about 6 months to actually program all the software, longer than we actually thought. It's very complicated in how we actually do it. So we probably will be looking at the awards for 2025, maybe 2026, depending on the distribution or the number of awards or number of assessments that's actually being carried out. So you'll have the maturity, you have the impact, then of course the combination of the two will give you the best PMO award. So this is an objective way rather than the subjective way that's typically done today, with just presenting a presentation on the PMO.
Yes, and I can just add to that because you know, many years ago the knowledge about the PMO and how to implement a service was quite not well known. So the implementation of the basic service in the PMO took like 2-3 years. Now we got many examples that they implementing like 10 services in the few months from the PMO perspective. So we are, as a PMO, we are able to implement the service very quick from our perspective. But adoption and readiness for the whole company to really use that approach and use that value that we are bringing, it's not so fast as we are. So the effect is that the PMO could launch new services every month, but from their perspective, but of course, company is not ready to adopt so much so quick. So the impact on the company and effect, this is very important part of our approach. And what next? So we are organizing AI PMO. I'm sorry, because maybe I should split sometimes. Maybe Robert, I too much identify with AI PMO in last year. So right now the AI PMO is organizing the masterclass around the world. So this is the one-day event that you can learn more about the benchmarking and additionally about the mega project. I will explain it in a moment. So this kind of assessment, the meetings are organized in many countries. We are after 3 of them. No, 2 of them already was done. The next is planned in October. We will go in Switzerland and in Poland the next sessions. So it's a one-day session that you can hear about assessment more, and also you can conduct the tier 1 during this session, and also about how to implement some services on the mega project or program levels. Because it's also important part and important specific of the PMO, not on the enterprise, on the company level, but dedicated to one mega projects.
Just add to this. I mean, there's master classes and there's master classes. A lot of them are lightweight. These are not. The morning is really intensive. You'll see some of the slides. We actually have from AI PMO, Nancy. She's a top consultant. She actually is on the board of quality management, ACM, I think it's called. She was also at NEOM. That's actually where I met her. And she's the chief developer as well. So you get really the in-depth insights. I'll be present, and also we have 2 other people that will be helping to facilitate the morning session for the maturity models. And so you will actually use the tool as part of this part of the masterclass. So it's theory, there's discussions, there's actually then your assessment, and then you can then benchmark your PMO in Warsaw against all the other ones. You will see all the dashboards. So there's a lot of nice information, and you can take that report away. Additionally, I didn't ask Marjay, did your client that used the report, the tier one assessment, did they like the report and the outcome?
Yes, they was surprised about the level of details, and they expected like very quick and short results, but they didn't expect that there will be so much content to help to understand the points and the areas and the service domains. So yeah, I got very positive feedback. Yeah.
So you will get that from that masterclass in the morning. The second one in the afternoon, that is super intensive. It's something that I wasn't sure would actually work. I've run this with doctorate students and MSc students. What you'll actually be doing is we're talking about complex projects. We call them mega projects. Mega is actually Latin for large. So it doesn't really matter whether you call it mega, giga. I mean, it's all just big. It could also mean like in Roche, for example, that's sponsoring us up in Basel, a genome and mapping the genome, for example, that's actually a mega project. We talk about methodologies, principle-based, procedural-based, hybrid-based methodologies. You will actually develop your own methodology, and we'll give you different concepts to use, and we have some tricks that we go and do. Then you build your own, and it's actually a competition. So it's very exciting. There's a lot of energy. We've got a PMO group. We've got an ePMO running, observations, feedback, and then we'll actually have prizes. So we'll actually be bringing books up to the afternoon, well, to the event. And actually the guys that win, or I think the team, they all get a set of books from AI PMO. So the books that we actually described. And then there'll be certificates that if depending on time, we may just email them to you or give them to you in person. So that is a very intensive session. Both are about 4 hours long. So do consider actually joining. It's your chance of taking a lot of the theory that we've done, the research we've done, actually put it into gamification. So it's a very enjoyable, but it's a tiring day because there's a lot to go and do.
Yeah, the next session in Poland will be on 14th of October, and it will be connected also with the full portfolio experience conference. So in this year we are celebrating the 10th edition of the event, and not only Robert will be special guest in Warsaw, but also we will have Peter Taylor and Marisa Silva as keynote speakers. And so you can join us for masterclass and or stay with us for 3 days. So instead of masterclass, we have a conference day with this many speakers and the workshop with Peter Taylor about the some AI topic, but dedicated to the PMO, and also some new methods that we see on the market. You can choose 3 days, you can choose only one day. It's up to you. And if you are interested only in the masterclass, please let us know because we got some small pool of the free entry, free invitation. So maybe you will be like use a little bit lottery and be winners of that. And in this year, the major topic is, of course, AI, but also we would like to talk about the portfolio visualization and optimization because it's a common problem for the company, how to present the data and how to get from them, of course, decision that will support our business. And of course, the PMO maturity model and some sustainability topics and regarding to the or impacting the PMO in an organization in future.
Just a point on that last point. I actually changed it so Margie didn't see that before. I was actually marked discussed about doing PMOs and artificial intelligence. The thing is, if you got Peter's actually presenting in the morning AI on project management, I was going to do the afternoon on PMOs and AI. And reality, the next day is also going to be an artificial intelligence. So I said, look, let's give that to Peter to go and do because he's also a very good PMO guy with his books he's written. And I'll actually focus on sustainability. I'm actually going to present at a research conference in a month's time. I mentioned that with IPMA. And I did 12 days of solid research, and I actually discovered something that's quite radical that people haven't thought about, which I will present at the conference in 4 weeks' time, but I'll also present that as well at your conference. So you'll be the first practitioner conference to see a lot of content and the role of PMOs in sustainability. I mean, not just for the PMO itself, but for the organization, and actually how they design, how they set up, how they run, how they actually monitor. So this hasn't been done before, so it'll actually be brand new materials for this conference for that particular topic.
If you will have any questions about this 3 days, let me know. I will send you more details. Before we give you the floor for some maybe questions or maybe your experience that you want to share. So our goal today was not only present AI PMO approach, what was developed by Robert and the team regarding to assessment of the PMO, but inspired you a little bit to think about the level of the maturity that your PMO is bringing, and also how it's impacting on the company. This kind of benchmarking, of course, you can use the our approach, but also just if you use just quick ideas from this presentation, you can also review yourself and your PMO by yourself as a starting point. Tier 1 is very quick and very effective to start with us, and future levels also can bring you quicker value. That's somebody who already saw many PMOs and got a expert level in that can help you in develop and in present the roadmap and target operation model for your PMO. Any questions, comments, or final thoughts from you, Robert?
No, I think you covered all the points off. Let's just leave it open to the floor. So do we have, where's Amadou, any questions? Or Henry, I'll put you guys on the spot from this journal. I think one, two may have, from our side, may have listened in before. Wesley sort of probably went to a meeting. He's actually doing his Wesley and also Amma so Wesley is actually in Canada and Amma's from Saudi Arabia. They were actually looking at research in showing if there's PMOs that have been using maturity models that have been giving them false positives, in other words, inflated scores. We found this when giving courses myself and the other instructors as well, that people were saying, oh, we got 4.5 using P3M3, whereas we would assess them at maybe 2. In other words, they get way too high assessments from the reality of where they actually are. And this is a problem, because what happens is that you have PMOs winning awards where they shouldn't be winning awards, and therefore people are following suboptimal PMOs when they think actually that's the best in class. So it's important to make sure that you use the right tool for what it's intended to, or the right model for what it's intended to. Any questions from anybody? You can just type it up. Feel free just to type it, and we're happy to answer any questions. Has anybody actually used the maturity models before on their PMOs? Anybody? Or anybody thinking about using a maturity assessment?
No, this is actually exactly the point. Finding out how this maturity level are working in, for example, my real world. But this is not done yet.
So what you're saying is that to understand how it works and then to consider using it not for your PMO.
Yeah, this is exactly the point. I have never used it, but I'm keen to do it and to run that approach.
Yeah.
But not done yet. So it's something which is I cannot really grab currently. I understood the principles, but this is exactly what you say. What is about the reality? And as you said, regarding the mismatching or misjudging of these terms, this is exactly what is maybe the point, how to approach that way, how to bring this great model into life, which you can trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when you do the tier one assessment, it's only 100 questions. We had to do lots of tricks. It's harder to do less than to do more. So it provides a certain value, and we look more form and function, so it looks very nice, but there's a lot of depth, and we had these tricks of domain spanning type questions. When you look at the full assessment, so tier 2 is only maturity, tier 3 is maturity and impact. And tier 4 is actually looking at the target operating model. You see, you only get to actually tier 3 when we see where the service gaps are, where there's problems. That's where we can then look at impact, because if you've got lots of service gaps, it implies you're not doing what you should be doing, and therefore your impact will actually reduce. But at each level, you're going to get a pretty good understanding of how things actually work. If you can come to the Swiss one, I know you're in Germany, so if you can come down to Basel for the day, it's on the 11th of October, I think, at Roche, the head office. So they let us use their biggest meeting room in their building. So on the 11th of October, Basel.
I check definitely, because looking on tier 1 is interesting, but of course the new explain in tier 2 and tier 3.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually what I'm looking for in the end. Would be great, of course.
Yeah, I mean, tier 1 is really just a taster, and you understand it, and we'll explain it. But you've got, like all things, you know, like you get the freebies, but it's not really worth that much. It's really the independent assessment and the whole methods that go behind it. In fact, I used the whole concepts of the case studies, because when people take the certification from AI PMO, it's not just the theory, it's actually the practice. And that's where you do the case studies with the real problems. And we actually utilize parts. We've been testing parts of the maturity model as part of the case study. So we actually used a multi-purpose function for the case studies.
Sounds good. I checked 11.
Great, thanks, Jen. Any other questions, Alberto? How about yourself? I can actually unmute you. Any questions from you, Alberto or Amadou? Well, let's allow all of you to talk. Henry, you must have something. Everybody's quiet.
I was muted.
No, you're muted.
No questions from my side.
No questions, yeah?
Yeah.
Is it everything's clear? Was it okay? Presentation?
You know, I have to discuss it with Maciek.
Okay,
So,
I understand.
Yeah. He is my,
You're from Poland,
mentor
obviously.
here.
Yeah, okay, very good. Okay, so if there's no further questions, then I'll want to thank everybody. Thank you, Marjels, for as a partner of AI PMO, and I hope that for the Polish guys that you do come to the conference, whether it's to the masterclass or just the conference or the whole lot. It'd be great to see you there. And then if anybody else has got questions or interest in doing an assessment, if you want the tier 1 assessment, we do charge a small amount on the website. We actually have a website called PMO-MI, Maturity and Impact. It's all trademarked. So you can actually use it on there. It's 99 euros. Or if you come in Switzerland, we are doing a free masterclass day with 2 masterclasses where Roche is actually sponsoring that. So they're paying for the cost and we're doing it all for free. And then you can actually use the tool for free. Or if you join the one in Poland, of course, it's all part of the package of actually using tier 1 assessment as well. All right, so then I'd just like to thank everybody, and I wish you a great evening for what's left of it, and a good rest of the week.
Thanks for presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.